the UK ruled that like gender and biological sex are now the same thing. So you're not a woman, you're a man. So like they didn't even like define what a man is. If you do not fit the definition of woman, you're just a man, which is going to exclude obviously trans women and a lot of intersex women. Women who are not producing gametes. This is going to exclude a lot of people. Top court says definition of a woman is based on biological sex and excludes transgender people. Wow, look at them. Oh, they're so happy. What a setback for feminism. Woo! Definition of woman is now based on biological sex. It's probably also going to exclude intersex women. Woo! What a victory for equality and feminism. This is definitely what the feminist movement was all about. Wow, adult human female. A victory. Everyone knows what sex is and you can't change it. The Susan Smith, co-director of an anti-trans radicalist group that is anti-science and does nothing for women except just go after trans women and hurt all women. What a victory. Now men have the opportunity to actually figure out who is a woman and who isn't. You just need your little ID saying what your karyotype is. You might have the primary and secondary sex characteristics of females. But yeah, maybe your chromosomes are XXY or XY. You're no longer a woman. Can you tell me how this benefits women now? Can anyone like tell me real quick how this is going to help women when it comes to like discrimination and equality? No, men can't go in the women's restroom. Finally, these biological males can no longer invade women's spaces because they are chromosome checkers at the door. You need your little card now issued by J.K. Rowling personally. How does any of this actually help women? It's going to give men control over what and who a woman is by reducing womanhood to their gametes. Woo! Look at these women. Maybe. Like, do we actually know who is a woman here if we haven't seen like their chromosomes? Can any one of those like actually tell me if they are biologically female? You know fully well that this is going to harm all women, right? The thing is, like, this is going to be used to justify kicking out intersex women. They're going to be like, no, women are actually XX chromosomes, and these are the hormone levels, and this is like what real women actually are, and if you like differ from that, like, you're not a real woman. I love that people who do not have an understanding of advanced biology and sociology make decisions about things that they don't understand. It's kind of funny how that works. Can you imagine? You go to a mechanic to repair your car, but they don't know anything about how to repair a car, so they just do whatever and cause more issues. But like, they thought about it really hard. Why exactly are they so happy to basically be cruel for no payoff? Because they are miserable, wild, garbage people who are being radicalized by J.K. Rowling, who's also a miserable, despicable human being. The feminist idea that women are defined by their fucking genitals. Oh yeah, it's just going to harm all women. And even if they're not intersex, even if they're not trans, you know, this is going to hurt any woman who doesn't fit, who doesn't look exactly like them, who stands out. And you can be like, well, I can have short hair and still be a woman, and then they get called a man because they have like short hair, or they're not presenting right, or when they're older they're going to grow like facial hair. Eventually someone is going to challenge them and be like, well, you don't look like a woman enough, you should go into the men's restroom. And then they're like, no, I'm a real woman, here's my card saying that I have XX chromosomes, look, check my genitalia, look, my gametes. But at least these three trans athletes can't compete in women's sports anymore. What you also allowed is that now couldn't theoretically trans men compete with women? The UK Supreme Court ruled Wednesday that a woman is someone born biologically female, including transgender people from the legal definition in a long-running dispute between a feminist group. They are not a feminist group, they are anti-woman. TERFs are not feminists. They are not pro-women. They don't do anything for women. It's just misogyny and like being boosted by patriarchal lunatics. The court said the unanimous ruling couldn't be seen as a victory by one side, but several women's groups that supported the appeal celebrated outside court and hailed it as a major win in their effort to protect spaces designated for women. From whom? From whom are you protecting, and how? How are you protecting women from cis men rushing into the women's restroom and abusing them? How is that beneficial? There's no rise in abuse if you allow trans women to go into the women's restroom, trans men to go into the men's restroom. There's no rise in abuse when it comes to women in female spaces. However, if you force trans women into men's spaces, those trans women get abused. And if you are a woman, a cis woman, who doesn't fit into the worldview of someone who has been radicalized by people like J.K. Rowling, Elon Musk, etc., and they think that you're one of those freaks, and they follow you into the women's restroom and assault you, you screaming that you have XX chromosomes is not going to protect you. How is this a win? Trans women pose no threat to cis women, but we pose a threat to them if we make them outcasts 4 years ago. Transgender teens with restricted bathroom access at higher risk of sexual assault. Women are getting harassed in bathrooms because of anti-transgender hysteria. That was 2016. This hysteria has been going on for such a long time, and they just never learn. You know, when J.K. Rowling went out to those two intersex boxers and being like, oh, look, there are men competing with women, and like putting them through so much harassment. Rowling doesn't care. Like, there was also the instance with the cis woman in Walmart who is like 6'4". But like, the thing is, this lie that trans people are invading or like making women's spaces unsafe has been debunked in 2016. Cis men who want to do bad things, they just go in there. They don't really care. We also know if you force trans women into the wrong spaces, or trans men or non-binary people into the wrong spaces that do not match how they are being perceived by society, then they are making themselves a target because they are standing out. If someone who, quote unquote, looks like a woman walks into a men's restroom, what do you think is going to happen? But that's what they are trying to do by like making us stand out. You know, imagine having like a passport, a picture of someone who looks like a woman, in quotation marks again, and then on the driver's license or like the passport, it says male. That person is now standing out. And with the rise in like anti-trans propaganda and hatred for trans people, in this hysteria, they're making themselves a target. You know, trans men who look like men, quotation marks, were being forced now to put an F in their driver's license, etc. And you have a picture of a man and the gender says female because these people only think that everybody who is trans is a trans woman, who is MTF and like predators, etc. They don't even acknowledge that trans men exist. They're like, oh, this is one of those trans women. We're going to fix that. We're going to fix that F. We're going to change it to an M, and we're going to destroy all the stuff. This lunatic can't just look like a man and access women's spaces. Like, we've seen posts about that stuff happening. So like, I'm just really curious, which group does this actually help? It sure as hell doesn't help all women. It doesn't help cis women. It doesn't even help all cis straight women who are white. The justices made it clear that the Gender Recognition Act remains in force and that trans people are still covered by provisions that prohibit harassment and employment discrimination. This conclusion does not remove or diminish the important protections available. I would say it just doesn't help. No, it doesn't. And it's just so sad that these people think it's a victory. Like, these people pat themselves on the back for going after a group, a minority, a fraction of people who who are not the problem, who are not the root cause of the issues. And it's like so interesting because like they are actually helping the oppressors. They're not just like siding and enabling the oppressors, they're just like actively benefiting them. All under the guise that, oh, women know what women are. 5 judges ruled that the UK Equality Act means trans women can be excluded from some groups and single-sex spaces, such as changing rooms, homeless shelters, wow, amazing, swimming areas, and medical or counseling services provided only to women, which also includes places where when you are being abused by someone and you want to go into a women's shelter for protection, they can now just turn you away because, you know, f women, I guess. The court said the ruling did not remove rights for trans people, still protected from discrimination under UK law. Yeah, about that. But it said certain protection should apply only to biological females and not transgender women. Wow. What a victory for equality. The ruling brings some clarity in the UK to an issue that has polarized politics in some other countries, particularly the United States. Republican-controlled states over the last 4 years have been banning gender-affirming care for minors, barring transgender women and girls from sports competitions that align with their gender, and restricting which public bathrooms transgender people can use. How did that turn out? How did that work out in the US? Leads to more hate crimes. And if you are now being perceived as trans, these people are going to turn you away from women's shelters, etc. Isn't it amazing that now you, when you need help, you seek help, you need to actually go to a doctor to prove that you are actually a woman in order to gain access to women's only spaces? Isn't that great? Isn't that a victory for women? This is definitely not going to be used against women of color, right? Women are women, men are men. You can't change sex. Yeah, trans women are women. Women are women. Like, nobody is denying that fact. You know, it's just that, like, our definition, the real definition of what a woman is, also considers gender identity and more than just reducing womanhood to reproductive organs. Using some of their rhetoric as an example, I don't want to go too deep into that, but, like, I have a little clip. This is the VTuber Kirsche, who, for their April Fool's stream, decided there would be good content to go to the Tumblr genders. And these are the sexual desires of people. Looking at FFF, threesome where all humans involved identify as women. Let's look at a really sane take of someone who pushes white supremacist rhetoric and conspiracy theories.
If you're gonna have, like, an FFF thing where you include all individuals who identify as women, how are lesbians who are lesbian by definition going to find an FFF that doesn't involve men?
I have a really easy solution for that, because lesbians by definition, you know, obviously genital preferences exist, etc. You're not attracted to all women just because you're lesbian. But like the people who identify as women, whose gender identity is that of a woman, you know, they're usually not men. I hope that helps. You know, obviously, if you look at the UK ruling now, they define what a woman is based on their XX chromosomes. That would mean that an intersex woman with XY chromosomes are no longer allowed in your little threesome that is happening inside your mind. But like, you can have preferences, but it's just kind of insane to insinuate that people who identify as women are actually just men. Because if our gender identity aligns with the gender, which is a construct, the social construct, the category of woman, that doesn't really make us men. But yeah, let's have a sane take in the next line. FFM.
FFM is a threesome between 2 humans who identify as female and 1 who identifies as male. If you have an FFM threesome where the 2 identifying as female people are male and the 1 identifying as male is a female, is that just like a regular heterosexual orgy?
I don't really like the definition here of being like female male. If you want to make it about biology, if you want to make it like female and male, there's something funny that happens when you actually medically transition. And I don't really like trans medicalism as like an angle to like justify that a trans woman is a woman or a trans man is a man. But I'm just like, I'm trying to like play this game and just like expand on it, because like if you take HRT, if you replace your testosterone dominant body with a estrogen dominant body, you are actually no longer really male, you know? Hormonally speaking, I am female. I fall in those levels. I actually have less testosterone than a lot of cis women. Also, like a really great aspect, why do you care about what other people do behind closed doors? I mean, like, I don't mind if you have your preferences and you want to talk about that and share that, but I feel like telling other people what their dynamic, what their sexual desire should look like, and what category they should fall under based on your definition of your ignorant worldview is kind of... That's like telling gay cis men, that they are not allowed to be attracted to gay trans men because you don't view trans men as men. I don't know why you want to control what happens behind closed doors or what happens in some people's minds. It's a little bit icky. I hope this helps. I know that you definitely made this stream in order to like be educated on something and not have like cheap content for your chat.
I feel like I now have to unironically do math equations to figure out degeneracy.
This is not really math. It's also not really degeneracy. I think like what you're doing is kind of degenerate. It's just people, and like you have your own attractions, you have your own preferences, and I don't really understand why you need to define the sexual desires of other people. I bet she cares about the facts. Oh yeah, definitely. They're technically more woman than a real woman. Oh yeah. You will never be as woman as I am.
I don't hate you for being gay or trans. I hate you for making me do math.
That is definitely the issue. It's not that you have like difficulties understanding that trans people are people and you don't need to define and reduce them to their genitalia, reproductive organs, etc. I'm sure that like the problem is actually that you have to do math. Actually, I would recommend opening a biology book that wasn't written for third graders and it's actually like advanced, which also is going to teach you about like intersex people existing, etc. There's a field called gender studies. I know it has the word gender in it. That's like really difficult for people to understand. So that is like a part of sociology where you're going to learn a lot more about humans and society as a whole and how gender plays a role in there and how it's separate from your biological sex. I mean, like, doesn't even the World Health Organization have like a little website on that you could like read? Gender interacts with, but is different from sex, which refers to the different biological and physiological characteristics of females, males, and intersex persons, such as chromosomes, hormones, and reproductive organs. Gender and sex are related to, but different from gender identity. I feel like if you understand that little segment, this is going to solve a lot of issues that you have when it comes to these little things. But like, considering that you have texts like this...
This all sounds like mental illness. Yeah, this all sounds like mental illness to me, man.
Bi-curious, bisexual, gay, demisexual, demi-romantic, etc. All sounds like mental illness. Kind of interesting how that works. I hope this helps, but you know, if people are going to come at me and they're like, the UK ruled that like gender identity and gender and biological sex are now the same thing, so all your points are invalid, etc. You're not a woman, you're a man. So like, the funny thing is that like they didn't even like define what a man is. So if you do not fit the definition of woman, you're just a man, which is going to exclude obviously trans women and a lot of intersex women, a lot of women who do not fit into the binary box, women who are not producing gametes, maybe they don't have reproductive organs. This is going to exclude a lot of people. We're basically going back to the 1930s, where everything that we built towards, everything that we've accomplished in the past like 40 years, 50 years is just going to be wrecked. And this is like one of the stepping stones, one of the pieces, one of the dominoes that is going to fall. It's always MTF seen by them as an issue and rarely FDM, because their issue is with cis men, abusive cis men. So they view trans women as men, and they view trans men as women who have suffered due to the patriarchy and cis men, and are being shamed for their womanhood so much that they start resenting it, and they have to transition, completely invalidating their experiences, using trans women as a scapegoat because going after cis men is more difficult than going after trans women, being on a little power trip, you know, having a little ego trip, being like, hey, isn't this amazing that we accomplished this victory for women, for the real women, while all the cis men who are abusing them, who have abused them, who are going to abuse them, are still going to be unfazed by all that. You know, J.K. Rowling is like boosting all these TERFs, all these anti-trans organizations, etc., and radicalizing people. And then anytime a trans woman gets murdered, she's like, women aren't responsible for male-on-male violence. To those celebrating the fact that I'm smoking a blunt, it's a cigar. Even if it decided to identify as a blunt for the purpose of the celebration, it would remain objectively provable and demonstratively a cigar. Is that a biological reality? Or is that just like a social category, like a word that we like use to describe something? Trans people remain protected under equality law. All you've partially accomplished is a perverse interrogation of women that will require them to identify via their genitals. You know, like how when you harass and profile that biological female athlete and looked at it, instead of brushing that off, J.K. Rowling has to double down and be like, males with 5 ARD are not female. Trans identified people, we're not identifying as trans, we're just trans, remain protected under UK law. The Supreme Court has confirmed that trans identified men are not entitled to women's sex-based rights. But like doubling down on going after the intersex athlete, interesting. What a victory for women. Women aren't responsible for male violence. Male-on-male violence is neither women's fault nor their problem to solve. It is the height of misogyny to claim women's words cause, justify, or excuse male violence. So like if I tell you that a specific group of people is a threat, and I have a platform that is pretty big and I have a lot of money and I fund organizations who do nothing than like spread misinformation and go after that one group, if a member of that group is getting hurt, then it's pretty easy to connect the dots and be like, hey, this is actually your fault. Like, obviously, it's not just your fault. You're a massive contributor to this happening. Sexual predators are capitalizing on the movement you champion, associating trans women, trans people in general, with sexual predators, pushing that over and over again, radicalizing people, inciting violence, spreading hatred, misinformation, etc. And then being like, it's not a woman's fault that men kill each other. This is a tweet about a trans woman getting raped, having her arms, legs broken, and being drowned in a river in the context of worldwide climate of transphobia. Trans women are also not responsible for male violence. Exactly. But yeah, what a victory. Boosting a rhetoric that has been used to harm a small community and has also been hurting all cis women and a lot of cis men who do not meet the expectations of what a man has to be like. Definitely not your fault. You're definitely really innocent. I just hope that one day this is going to come to bite you, and I hope that day is going to come, and it's not going to come at the expense of the lives of trans women and trans men and non-binary people. Anyone who doesn't meet your definitions of what a woman, what a man has to be like. I hope it's not going to come at the expense of intersex people, agender people, gender fluid people, etc. I hope that one day it's just going to be you while everybody else can flourish, because what you're doing is pushing misogyny. You're not helping women. You're anti-woman. You're throwing the feminist movement back. It shouldn't be us have to pay for whatever suffering cis men have caused